Greetings again everyone, and I come bearing glad tidings as Sigma have decided to update their already good 24-70mm f2.8 DGDN art lens with a new Mark II version. The original was a very nice little competitor to Sony's own similar G Master lens, except at a far lower price. This new Mark II version follows in that tradition by only being £1,180 here in the UK. Now obviously that's still a lot of money, but not so much when you realise that Sony's new G Master Mark II lens is £2,000, getting on for twice as expensive. So if this Sigma lens is any good, then all kinds of serious photographers will be quite interested. It's a full-frame autofocus lens for Sony's E-mount mirrorless cameras, and it'll also be available for L-mount cameras. I'd like to thank Sigma UK for loaning me this lens for a couple of weeks for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. If I could only have one lens for my camera, it'd probably be a fast standard zoom lens, especially one starting at 24mm, which, on a full-frame camera, is lovely and wide. 70mm isn't especially telephoto, admittedly, but open up your aperture to f2.8 and you can get some lovely out-of-focus backgrounds here for portrait and other subject photography. Oh, and that constant bright maximum aperture of f2.8 also makes a lens like this very flexible for video work. This Sigma lens's build quality is excellent, as usual for one of their more expensive art offerings. It's a lovely mixture of metal and high quality plastics with some good basic weather sealing. At about 730 grams, it's not lightweight though, it's certainly quite a solid piece of glass in your hand. At the rear we get an aperture control ring. It can be set to lock in and out of automatic position and set to turn smoothly or with clicks at every third of an f-stop, so it's useful for both stills and video work. Then comes the rubberized zoom ring. It turns a little heavily but very smoothly and evenly with barely any stickiness to it, so again that's very useful for video work. It also has a little switch on the side to loosely lock it into place at 24mm. Then comes the autofocus hold buttons and an auto manual focus switch, followed closely by a rubberized focus ring, which again turns smoothly with just the right amount of resistance. It's electronically coupled with the focus motor and, as you can see here, works very responsively to being turned. When you're zoomed in, focus breathing is low, however zoom out and we do catch some breathing as you focus in and out. Still, this amount is not going to be a real problem even for video makers. The lens's autofocus motor is silent and accurate. It works fairly quickly in single-shot autofocus mode, but in continuous autofocus mode it's almost instantaneous and had no issues with subject tracking either. Nice. The lens has a front filter size of 82mm, so you'll need quite big filters here. It comes with a nice quality hood with a little rubber trim and a locking button to it. The lens does not feature image stabilization. Overall, this is absolutely fantastic build quality and the lens works almost perfectly with especially powerful autofocus. Alright, let's see about image quality then. Today I'll be testing it out on a full frame camera, my 42MP Sony a7R III. In-camera corrections are turned on. At 24mm and f2.8, image quality in the middle is superb. Perfect resolution and perfect contrast. That sharpness continues far across the image frame. We only see softness emerging in the very edges of the image here. Stop down to f5.6 and, well, no real improvement. f8 looks sharper though, and so does f11, so landscape photographers will be glad to see those edges get completely sharp eventually. Alright, let's zoom into 45mm now. Again, at f2.8 we see complete perfection in the middle of the image. Corner image quality is better now than at 24mm, looking fairly sharp, even right into the edges. The picture quality stays this sharp as you stop down to f8. Stop down any further than this and diffraction will begin to cause softness. So finally, let's zoom right into 70mm. At f2.8, again, the picture looks excellent in the middle. Some good news is that corner image quality has improved again from the wider angles, looking very sharp straight from the maximum aperture now. Stop down to f5.6 for a touch of extra sharpness in those corners, and at f8 they now look perfect. At f11 or darker, softness from diffraction begins to creep in once again. So, it's a great performance from the lens, although picture quality in its very edges at wider angles could have been a little sharper. Still, we're getting plenty of resolution and contrast here overall, and its corner image quality is just a little better than Sigma's original 24-70mm DGDN lens, although probably not improved enough for owners of the original to bother upgrading. Alright, well, let's turn off in-camera corrections and take a look at distortion and vignetting. At 24mm, there's quite a bulge of barrel distortion to be seen, with very dark corners at f2.8. Stop down to f4 or f5.6 for those corners to brighten up. Zoom into 30mm for that distortion to straighten out, and at 70mm we get moderately bad pincushion distortion, again with strong vignetting at f2.8. Again, stop down to f4 or f5.6 for those corners to brighten up. So, it's an averagely bad performance here for a standard zoom lens. Thankfully, these problems will get corrected by your camera very well. Okay, let's move on and take a look at close-up image quality. Zoom into 70mm and the lens gets you nice and close to smaller subjects, although actually other such lenses on the Sony system can get you even closer than this. Anyway, close-up image quality is dreadfully bad at f2.8 with huge colour fringing. f4 is still pretty awful, but at f5.6 we at least start to get some sharpness and contrast emerging, and finally at f8 that colour fringing is finally mostly gone. By the way, if you zoom out to 24mm, you can get even closer to your subject here, and the close-up image quality is much better at f2.8 and sharp at f4. The only problem with doing this will be getting light onto your subject though, because the front of the lens is so big and right up against it here. Now for work against bright light, and the Sigma goes from shame to glory here as it manages to retain loads of contrast whether zoomed out or zoomed in, and flaring remains very low. Nice work there. And while we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sunstars. Good news on the coma front, even at f2.8 there's basically none to be seen here, which will be very useful for nighttime photography. When it comes to sunstars, it's only really at f11 that they begin to emerge, and just mildly. At f16 and f22 they finally get quite strong. Next, Bokeh, and happily this lens is more than capable of getting you some beautifully soft out-of-focus backgrounds here, even in difficult transitional zones. Very nice again. Finally, longitudinal chromatic aberration. What's the opposite word to apochromatic again? Well, whatever it is, this is the dictionary definition, as we are being treated to some of the craziest Bokeh highlights I've ever seen at f2.8. It's still there at f4, f5.6 and even f8. Finally at f11 it's mostly gone away. That particular problem aside though, this is clearly an excellent fast standard zoom lens. Not the best, but excellent, and certainly quite reasonably priced for what you're getting. It's sharp with excellent contrast, low coma, smooth bokeh, and fabulous build quality. This lens's only stumbling blocks are its close-up image quality and longitudinal chromatic aberration, where it really struggled, and I suppose the image edges could have been a bit sharper at 24mm, but ultimately, if you're looking for a great fast standard zoom lens for your Sony camera, and you want it to start at 24mm, and you can't afford the Sony G Master Mark II like most of us, then this is a perfect choice and it comes highly recommended. Some of you might be wondering how this lens compares to Sony's G Master Mark II and Tamron's 28-75mm G2 lenses. Well, watch this space. A comparison video is coming right up. Ages since I've done one of those, isn't it? Anyway, thanks for watching everyone. Patreon link in the description below if you enjoy these videos and want some exclusive bonus content. Take care and God bless everyone.